I get to see these posts. If you want a relationship to last, make sure God is in it. I grew up with the God concept in relationships. I'm going to say, if you want a relationship to last, make sure your heart is in it. So make sure that you know about your right brain mode stuff, and so that you know about your attachment category, about trauma, and about being a Pacha and not a Cusco from the Emperor's New Groove. Pacha, no matter how Cusco handles the unavailability of his emotional expression, and he points and lies and twists and turns and does aspects that is not only of a person who gets labeled by those who claim to know how to support relationships, because see, a human heart is active when you have access to your right brain mode stuff. So if I get upset, I know I'm upset, which means I'm tainting my words as I speak from my mouth. It's very common sense in the book of a Pacha. So a person who shakes a hand means it the first time around, but it's because I've been determined with having secure attachment, the capacity therefore to integrate my brain organically, because my first year of life I did not have a right brain that was affected and impeded in its growth by developmental trauma or some other aspect that will also not allow me potentially to be able and navigate my self-regulation, so the regulating of my nervous system. And while people talk about spirituality concepts and they don't learn about being a human, and they even go on to spread rumors about how yoga gets a devil out of your body. These are people who are influencers, they're podcasts. I mean, so I've heard the word God since I was a little kid. And in fact, God to me is consciousness and the essence of life and love. It always has been, which is why it was not a problem to say, hey, God, I don't think any of those people that use your name are actually following you. But I do remember being told as I got to go through my communion, my confirmation, that you decided you wouldn't come and intervene. That everybody needed to remember who they were not and how not to cast stones. And Jesus, the example of what we should look to, which is a Pacha. Every time Cusco lies to Pacha, twists and turns, and actually almost leaves him to his death, Pacha is actually going to keep his word and gets Cusco to back his home, being a human. Anyone who hasn't watched The Emperor's New Groove, spoilers alert, all over the place. So we're going to use that story because, see, Enlightenment, Soul Age Group, 5D mystics, and functional adult, it's straightforward. So relationships, you don't need to make sure that God is part of it, because this is what happens when people think that's the part of what a relationship is. As a polyamory person in a monoamory world, I can share with you that people who would believe the phrase like that, they have pretty much, they're a squirrel from the lovely Emperor's New Groove. The ability to say, oh, I know that I'm a saint and you did something that is not right with my sanctity, so now I'm going to justify actually being that aggressive to take revenge, or basically it could be an isma, a kronk. So anyone who has an excuse, a Cusco, oh, I decided because I didn't like what you were doing. That's what we get to see. So it's not about God, and I would love to say that it is, but see, as I grew up, I saw people not respect the words that I was taught, and in fact, that's what I shared with God. But the death do you part, that was something very beautiful. What you understand about a handshake, as Pacha says to Cusco, don't shake if you don't mean it. Cusco shakes it, and he doesn't mean it. What you get to understand from attachment and trauma-informed individuals who are therapists is that kids lie because they were terrified. And while adults who don't know anything about attachment or trauma, they don't want to believe in updated data because they don't like what they hear. I mean, really, you're just being asked to look to learn to self-regulate, not anything else. But, I guess being the authoritative style is too challenging. It's not that. It's the new information. So it's new when we have people who are coaches, consultants that mix sciences with spirituality and religious concepts. And so they go around saying, make sure God's in your relationship if you want it to last, versus make sure that your heart as a human being is open, that you know about your implicit memory, because it's all in there, that you also have the awareness of if you are emotionally, mentally not matching with another person, to speak authentically and transparently, and when you're nervous, that it's normal. So to be vulnerable. That's why human heart. Because see, you can talk about concepts all day long. The question is, are you going to speak with your heart on your sleeve, which it's actually in your face? Are you going to speak a truth? I've seen a lot of teenagers, but I've seen young adults. And, you know, again, lovely attachment and trauma therapists inform me as I take courses how many people actually don't want to get vulnerable, and they're in therapy with their partners and or partner. Depends. They might be polyamory, they might be monoamory. Either way, if you move into becoming a pacha, secure attachment, integration of the brain, that's your actual optimized human version, your higher functioning. So, you know, a relationship, why does it last? Lasts because two or more people decide that they actually shake a hand because they mean it. And when there's splinters and ruptures, they don't actually back away. But to know that you can have a splinter and a rupture, and then to engage means you need to have healthy self-worth, and your nervous system needs to be behind it. So if you don't know how to say, I'm sorry, if you don't know how to say, I was wrong, if you don't know how to say, you know, actually, I want to talk about these things, because see, that I'm sorry and that I'm wrong doesn't have to actually take place, as we see again in the Emperor's New Groove. Pacha doesn't lecture Cusco every time. He does not know how to speak, because Pacha knows what's going on, because a person who is functional adult, the integrated brain, see, they have access to their right mode, which reads your facial cues, your tone. I have laser eyes, not because I'm a mystic, but because my right brain is on, and I'm present with you because I don't have bottom up. I'm not defending myself, and I don't have top down. I don't have the let me chit chat while somebody's talking to me, because I assume to know everything they're thinking or feeling, because I'm going to create some stereotypes that have been around for years and say that I know everything because of those stereotypes, instead of just being present and enjoying. So when you have healthy self-worth, you're able to be present as an adult, as a pacha, and not be reactive. In fact, we learn about being responsive and not reactive from our lovely Sadhguru. So relationships, they last because people put their heart and their mind and their body into it, but it also means they know how to repair ruptures with authenticity, with transparency, which means with direct communication, not shaming, not blaming, not faulting, not revenging, not adaptive child charge states. With those require a good therapist, or for the person to be aware, I got shit coming up, I don't need to be using it. While people who use those sentences, relationships last only if God's there, yes, I've seen them. They're very interesting as they continue to just speak from their mouth, and instead of doing polyamory, they will insult each other when things go behind the scenes, and then they will live codependent type patterns, and they perpetuate transgenerational trauma by saying we're going soft, and that we are all, whatever is the word for, the devil's won, because we don't want to conform to scripture. And it's very interesting. These same people will think of themselves as intellectual. When I see the intellectuals using scripture, they're not intellectual. It's a teenager, it's a Cusco in the book of a person who's a pacha, which is why we don't say anything. We don't need to lecture a child who's using their brain pretty much to just regurgitate information to support the people who believe this story. If, again, the relationship is going to last, it's because when you shake it, you mean it, which means you're a conscious lover. It's because of God, by the way, is consciousness, intelligence. It continues to be an infinite number of stars. It doesn't have to be an entity, but, you know, that's a subjective perspective. A 5D mystic, enlightenment, functional adult goes beyond all of those concepts of spirituality, has plenty of 5D educators, and the whole heart